Hi everyone, my name is Tuls and I'm from Fremont, Michigan. My work that is on display here in the galleries is in printmaking and is titled Dear Journal. I will be graduating soon with a major in studio art and a minor in art history. In this artist talk, I will walk you through this body of work, both the process of creating what you see on the wall and the ideas and inspirations behind it. The original inspiration for this work came to me one day as I was scrolling through Instagram, and this shirt came onto my feed as a pop-up ad. Normally I just scroll past ads, but in this instant I was drawn to this image, and I couldn't just scroll past without taking a screenshot to save it for later. A few months after saving this image, I came back around to it, and I found myself wanting to recreate it and personalize it a little bit more. Here you can see the original sketches I made. The one on the left didn't feel close enough to me, so I changed the iconographic elements to match my own personal style instead. I switched out the beanie for a ball cap and the skateboard for a penny board. The sketch on the right is what would launch this entire body of work into what it is now. At the beginning of creating this work, I was going through some difficult things in my personal life, and I was using journaling as a key source of processing that time. The concept of art journaling was introduced to me by my therapist a few years back, and I wanted to find a way to incorporate my own interpretation of art journaling into this body of work. Instead of writing directly onto the prints, I wanted my journal entries to be part of the work as well. I ended up making a font out of my own handwriting, and I used that to laser cut into the prints. Each idea I had for the series was a spur of the moment, and I found myself just going with the flow. The process of printmaking that I use for this body of work is also based around the principle of trusting the process and going with the flow. It's called reductive lino cut, and I would say it's my absolute favorite form of printmaking that I've learned so far. So reductive lino cut is a way for printmakers to achieve a multicolored print using one block. As the block of linoleum is carved, the area that is carved away creates white space and is not printed onto the paper. For example, as I printed the color blue on my bookmarks, I had to carve away the part of the linoleum that I wanted to show as pink, the previously printed color, and so on and so forth. As the layers of ink sit on top of each other, each color has a slightly longer drying time than the last. The colors are printed in order of lightest to dark because color theory says that yellow will not sit nicely on top of blue. Shown here are all the stages of reductive lino cut on my bookmarks. I started out with the color yellow for the duck's feet. The initial part of the block that I carved away were the wheels of the penny board, which show up as white, the color of the paper. The next color I printed was pink, so on the block of linoleum I only had to carve a small portion of the block so that the yellow feet would show through on the next round of prints. When I printed the blue color, I carved away the part of the block that I wanted to show through as the pink penny board. And finally, for the black outline, almost the entire block is carved away at this point, except for the outlined areas which would print as the color black. I hope this explanation helps in understanding how reductive lino cut works. If you're wondering how the prints stay aligned each time, we have a little tool called registration pins. To prep my paper for using registration pins, I measure out my paper to my block and then hole punch 2 holes in the bottom taped portion of the paper. The tape is just used to make sure that the holes in the paper stay the same size and that they don't expand with each time the paper is placed on the pins. After all the paper is hole punched, I place the pins on the block while they're inserted into a piece of paper. When the paper is aligned to the block, I tape down the pins and then it's ready to start printing. For a good period of time into making this body of work, I had only laser cut journal entries into the pieces, but it just didn't feel complete. I wanted to add another layer of complexity. This led to the decision to use shadows to project the words behind the print. I chose specific words and phrases that would shine through onto the paper behind it. This is a way of showing that while the bulk of a journal entry talks about one thing, the message that shines through to the other side represents my true thoughts and feelings happening inside my head. The words I picked out of each piece to emphasize are, for the most part, centered around a growth mindset. As my viewers read these specific phrases or words, my goal is for them to reflect on the phrases for themselves. The series that I made for this show represents the time I taught myself a new skill and went through all the motions of learning how to ride a penny board. You might ask, why am I representing myself as a duck? I couldn't tell you exactly why I chose ducks, I just love how silly they look. The first 3 pieces in this series shows the beginning of learning how to ride the penny board. As I contemplate learning this new skill, I hold the board close to my side, unsure and scared to start. The thought bubble piece represents the stage of contemplation. I made the choice to not laser cut text into this thought bubble as a way to reflect who I am as a person. I generally keep all my thoughts to myself. This also allows the viewers to use their imagination as to what I might be thinking in this moment. The piece that shows the board on the ground is the first stages of riding a penny board. Rolling the board on the ground with one foot is a good way to get a feel for it. These three pieces show the process of getting on the board and learning how to ride. This part of learning was the biggest leap of all. I had to tell myself to keep at it, to keep trying, no matter how slowly I started. At this stage of learning, falling or slipping is unavoidable, but that's the best way to learn how to ride a penny board. Sure, you might fall, and you might see stars if you hit your head, but that's part of learning. Thankfully, when I was learning how to ride, I didn't get a concussion. However, when you learn how to use a skateboard or a penny board for the first time, you have to learn how to fall safely. And I like to connect this to how I process my emotions in real time. Learning how to deal with them safely, for example, journaling, is the best way to minimize the weight of such heavy thoughts. The final piece of this series shows me finally making it to riding the board with full confidence in myself. I have practiced and practiced until I've become comfortable enough to ride the board. The next goal to tackle in this process was to feel comfortable enough to cruise around campus to get to class. Thankfully, learning this skill has saved my butt on several occasions I was running late to a class. This standalone piece differs from the rest because there is no penny board, and there is a greater amount of empty space surrounding the duck with no text laser cut in. To me, this piece represents the stage of reflection and contemplation, as I often do after a long day. I like to call it floor time. The title of this piece shows how I constantly strive to reframe negative emotions to humorous or positive emotions instead, which also helps in the process of journaling and/or reflection. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my artist talk today. I hope you enjoy this work as much as I have enjoyed creating it.